I was eating my dessert alone on Founder's Day when the delivery driver handed me the catering for my own funeral, a welcome packet to the luxury nursing home my son and daughter-in-law bought with my money. A single sticky note on the paperwork whispered the cold truth. They were planning to get rid of me before summer. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. The verdict landed not with a phone call, but a crisp, cream-colored envelope the delivery driver handed me by mistake. The loss was already in motion. My son, Garrett, was planning to quietly erase me before summer. I was eating a slice of my lemon pound cake alone on Founder's Day. I had set out the good china, the plates with the small blue roses that only came out twice a year. I had brewed a fresh pot of tea, now lukewarm, and watched the neighbors across the street celebrating with balloons and big bouquets. I had been waiting, hoping, and silently refusing to cry since dawn. A knock at the door around 4 o'clock made my heart spike. I smoothed the wrinkles from my Sunday blouse and walked slowly, pretending I hadn't been holding my breath for hours. It wasn't Garrett. It was a young man in a brown jacket, holding a large catering bag and a white envelope. "Delivery for Vance," he said. "Great. This was scheduled for today." I took the warm bag and the white envelope, confused. Maybe Garrett had ordered food as a peace offering for not showing up. I carried the bag into the kitchen. The rich smell of stuffed chicken breast and mashed potatoes hit me first, a cruel punch of normalcy. I opened the envelope. My hand froze on the countertop. It wasn't a card. It was a letterhead from Willow Creek Senior Resort, the kind of high-end facility with wood floors and scenic walking trails. I thought it was a terrible mistake, but then I saw the details. My name, Eleanor Vance, and the confirmed move-in date. Below that was Garrett's email address and the preferred payment method linked to my checking account. This was a finalized welcome packet, not a brochure. My son had submitted the paperwork. I wasn't just forgotten, I was being removed. My knees felt numb, and I gripped the granite counter to keep from falling. I was a piece of furniture being moved, not a human being. My hands were shaking as I pulled the packing slip taped to the side of the catering bag. The order confirmation listed 3 plates, one for Garrett, one for Tiffany, and one for her mother. Not me. I wasn't even an afterthought to their Founder's Day dinner. Then I saw the bright yellow sticky note attached to the top of the welcome packet. It was written in Tiffany's sharp, rushed script. "Here's the packet for Doug to sign. Once it's official, she'll be out before summer. Thank God." The humid air in the kitchen went thin. I leaned back against the counter, suddenly unable to breathe. The note wasn't meant for anyone who cared about me. It was a confession delivered by sheer accident. One wrong envelope, and the truth cracked my world open. I walked to the linen closet, down the hallway, my steps slow and uneven. I pulled out the fireproof box where I kept the financial folder. Inside were the bank records. I flipped to my checking account and confirmed the number listed on the retirement packet. I'd given Garrett access 5 years ago when I had hip surgery. I had thought I was being responsible. I hadn't known he was looking to take over. The kettle on the stove began to whistle, a high, piercing shriek I hadn't realized I'd turned on. I shut off the burner, pouring a cup of tea more for the motion than the comfort. I sat on the couch, the same couch where Garrett used to lie with his head in my lap when he had fevers. I set the envelope beside me. My dignity felt heavy, and I refused to let it fall. I picked up the phone. It rang 4 times before Garrett answered. His voice was casual, distracted. "Hey, Ma. Sorry I didn't call earlier. Been a busy day. How are you?" "I'm fine," I said, my voice quiet, almost steady. "Just had some unexpected mail delivered." There was a pause on the line, then a shift in his tone, a sudden cold fear. "Oh, what kind of mail?" "A welcome packet," I said. "From Willow Creek Senior Resort. I believe it was meant for you, but the delivery driver gave it to me. Silence. I could hear the muffled, frantic noise of him covering the mouthpiece, followed by a whispered, unmistakable line. She knows. Look, Ma, he finally fumbled out. We were going to talk to you about that. We were just trying to figure out the best way to help. I stood up slowly, the phone in one hand, the letter in the other. No, Garrett, you weren't. You sent me food like I was a stray dog. You canceled Founders Day. You took my money, and now you're making plans to remove me from the home your father and I built. You're making this dramatic, he sighed. No, I said. I'm seeing it clearly for the first time in a long time. Don't come here again. I'll make arrangements myself. I hung up, my hands perfectly steady. I looked at the letter lying on the couch like a snake that had slithered into my house. I was not going to be erased quietly. The phone didn't ring again that night. Garrett didn't call back, and no apologetic texts appeared. Shame was not a currency my son seemed to trade in. I slept fitfully, the retirement packet a cold presence beside me. I was not helpless, but I had a ticking clock before summer. The next morning, I rose early. I didn't waste time asking why. I tossed the lukewarm tea, boxed the lemon cake, and walked straight to my file cabinet. There were still a few things Garrett didn't have access to, and my lawyer's number was one of them. I called Jasmine Keller before I even had coffee. We'd gone to high school together back in 1966. She picked up on the second ring, her voice crisp. Millie Carter, haven't heard from you in too long. What's going on? I need to change my will, I said. Today. She didn't ask why. That was the end of the conversation. I sign. The fee hits my card. The choice was made. By noon, Jasmine was in my living room with her briefcase. I poured her coffee and told her everything. The nursing home, the financial betrayal, the sticky note. She didn't blink. That's elder fraud, she said. I looked at the welcome packet lying there. I want to make sure he never touches another dime of my money again, and I want the house safe. The legal montage began. We spent 2 hours going over the documents. I updated my will. I revoked Garrett's power of attorney. I changed the name on all my accounts to a living trust with Jasmine as co-executive. I transferred ownership of the house into the trust and had Jasmine notarize it all. It felt like sealing bricks over a door someone else tried to sneak through. The deed is now locked. Garrett's access is gone. When we finished, Jasmine looked at me with her sharp lawyer eyes. Do you want him to know? I shook my head, thinking of Tiffany's smug handwriting. Not yet, because I'm not done watching them reveal themselves. Jasmine packed her briefcase, the snap of the latch echoing in the quiet house. The victory was a deep exhale, loosening my shoulders. I had taken the most important action, the consequence, the immediate safety of my financial life. I walked to the kitchen and found my laptop. I pulled up my checking account, the one Garrett had used to initiate the deposit. I was trying to move the last of the balance to a new secret account when an error message flashed. Account on hold. Contact branch manager. The window shrinks to 12 minutes. My blood ran cold. He knew. He hadn't called, but he'd seen the POA was revoked and made a desperate digital move to freeze the funds I had left in that account. I called the bank, my voice thin and tight. I had to pay the price of admission. This is Eleanor Vance. I need to know why my account is on hold. I just revoked power of attorney for my son, Garrett Vance, and I believe he has... Ma'am, I can't discuss that, but an official hold was placed by the account co-signer this morning for suspected elder instability. Suspected elder instability. Tiffany's words, Garrett's signature. He was using the very thing I'd been trying to prevent to lock me out of my own money. I gripped the phone. I am perfectly stable. I've just been to my attorney. I want an immediate release of those funds. You will need to come in, ma'am, today. We close in 3 hours. He hadn't stopped. He had just changed weapons. The bank's hold message was still on my screen, waiting for me to fail. I signed the bank's release form just before the branch closed, the paper thin and damp under my furious hand. Garrett's attempt to paint me as unstable had failed, but it had bought him 2 hours. I moved the remaining funds to my new trust account. I slid the money to safety. I drove home. The sun was setting, casting long, accusing shadows across the familiar lawn. The lemon cake, once a symbol of hope, was now in the trash, wrapped tightly in plastic. The house felt less silent now. The hum of the fridge sounded like a threat. I was tired, but the exhaustion was a choice. I had traded quiet resignation for active battle. Later that day, I heard a sound I hadn't expected. My phone vibrated. It was Eva, my granddaughter, 17 years old, soft-spoken. I hadn't heard from her in months. I'd assumed Tiffany had put distance between us. Her voice was quiet, tentative. "Grandma, are you okay?" I took a deep breath. This was a vulnerability ping, and I had to pay it off with the truth. "Why do you ask, baby?" There was a pause. The air crackled with her unspoken knowledge. "Dad and Mom were arguing. I overheard something about you being mad about a delivery." I wanted to ask if she knew about the full plan, if she'd been part of the betrayal, but I stopped myself. Eva wasn't like them. "I found something they didn't want me to see," I said, "and I think I found out the truth about how they see me." She didn't say anything. I could almost hear the betrayal hitting her, a soft internal crack. Then she whispered the words that felt like a secret, hard-won alliance. "I think I already knew." Relief washed over me, a physical wave. Someone in that house still had a conscience. "I want to come see you," Eva said. "Whenever you're ready," I told her. "The door's open, but just for you. All right?" "Okay." I keep the door open. She showed up 2 days later, her hair longer, her shoulders set with a new resolve. She looked like a woman and a child at once. She sat on the same couch where the welcome packet had landed days earlier. "I heard Mom say you were overreacting," she said, looking at the envelope still on the side table. But I knew it wasn't nothing. I handed her the papers. She read the welcome packet slowly. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the rustle of the paper. When she finished, her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a quiet internal rage. "She lied to me," Eva whispered. "They both did." "Grandma, what are you going to do?" "I've already done it," I told her. "I changed everything. They can't touch anything now. Not the house, not the money, not me." She looked relieved, then ashamed. "I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. I knew something wasn't right. I just didn't know how to help." "You helped just now," I said. I reached without flinch. We drank tea together at the kitchen table. Nothing had changed in the room, but everything in my life had. The house they wanted to steal still had its owner. Eva stayed until the moon was high and low. After she left, the phone rang once, late. It was Jasmine, my lawyer, calling from a noisy street. "I just wanted you to know," she said, her voice dropping. "The deed transfer is finalized. The house is locked down in the trust, effective midnight tonight." I looked out the window at my quiet, sleeping home. The lock had finally given, and justice had an address. I woke up the next morning, feeling the house around me, the solidity of the walls, the quiet claim of the property that was now legally mine. I walked from room to room, touching the trim, the wallpaper, the edges of my life. I had spent 46 years here. I poured my coffee and walked out to the front porch. I wasn't waiting for calls, not for explanations, not for the other shoe to drop. I was simply standing on my property. Then I saw the familiar white SUV turn onto the street. It pulled up in front of my house and parked too close to the curb, as usual. Tiffany stepped out. She was wearing her cream blouse and heels, sunglasses perched like armor. She had no flowers, no peace offering, just her purse and a paper folder in one hand. I didn't invite her in. I waited at the edge of the porch. She walked up the steps stiffly, clearly rehearsed, and stopped just short of the door. "Eleanor," she said, forcing a brittle smile. "Can we talk?" "You've got 3 minutes," I said, and took a slow sip of my coffee. The air was already thin with pressure. She cleared her throat. "I think there's been a big misunderstanding. Garrett and I were only trying to do what's best for you." I placed my cup on the nearby rail. My voice was low. "You forged my medical information and initiated a transfer to a facility without my consent. That's not a misunderstanding, Tiffany. That's a betrayal." Her smile didn't falter, but a flush of red bloomed on her neck. "We thought we were helping. The home was beautiful. You would have had a private suite, a garden, weekly massages. We only wanted to give you comfort." I stared at her, cutting the soft-spoken words with a single vigorous question. "You want to talk about comfort?" Comfort is choosing when you speak. Comfort is freedom, not polished isolation. Her hand twitched around the folder. "Then why did I find out through a delivery mistake?" I asked. "Why wasn't I given the respect of a conversation?" She had no answer. I let the silence stretch. Her rehearsed air was beginning to crack, and I could see the greed beneath the veneer. Finally, she changed tack, her voice tight with real fear. "Look, Eleanor, Garrett is upset. He said you locked him out of the accounts." "Is that true?" "Yes," I said. "And the will and the deed and the trust, all of it." Her eyes went wide, stunned. "You can't do that without telling him." "I can," I said, holding my body straight. "And I did, because it's mine, and because I finally remembered who I was before your husband tried to make me feel like a burden." Tiffany's mouth opened, then closed. She took a step back, ready to regroup. The timer was about to run out. "I don't know what Eva told you," she added, a sudden, desperate shot in the dark. "She didn't tell me anything," I said. "I told her." Her jaw tightened. Her pretense of compassion vanished. "You're going to regret this." "No," I said, holding the gaze. "But you might." She turned, walked stiffly off my porch without another word, and got back into her SUV. I watched her drive away, calm and sure. The confrontation was over, but the consequence was just beginning. Tiffany wasn't one to concede. I knew she had only retreated to find a new weapon. The moment Tiffany's SUV disappeared down the street, I went inside and called Jasmine. "It's time to close the legal loops," I said. "I agree," Jasmine replied. Her thread of regret is her admission that she's shifting to a new strategy, reputation, or bureaucracy. That afternoon, I called Jasmine and had her draft a letter. This wasn't just a letter. This was a paper trail. It was formally rejecting any and all arrangements made in my name by Garrett at Willow Creek Senior Resort. Line 1. I signed the rejection. The legal fee is non-refundable. I didn't stop there. I sent copies to my primary physician and the state licensing board. They were going to think twice before letting a forged medical file and a non-consensual transfer go unnoticed. No one was ever going to use my age as a weapon again. Line 2. The consequence is immediate. The facility is now flagged for review. 2 days later, Eva came back. She didn't show up in a designer SUV. She brought me a bouquet of daffodils she'd picked herself. She wore no makeup, no pretense, and she hugged me like she meant it. This was a powerful echo image. The wilted wildflowers of her childhood love transformed into a deliberate, chosen gift. Mom's furious, Eva whispered. I know, I said. Let her be. We sat together on the back patio. Eva talked about college applications, about how her friends were all obsessed with filters, and how no one seemed to care about anything real. I told her about her grandfather, how he used to plant tomatoes in the yard and talk to them like they were children, how we once danced in the kitchen barefoot after losing half our money on a bad business loan. I let my guard down, a deliberate vulnerability. He wasn't always like this, I said softly, referring to Garrett. I know, Eva replied, her eyes clear. But he is now. She told me she wanted to spend more time here, that the quiet of my house made her feel grounded. I told her she didn't have to wait for a holiday to come home. She looked at me, tears welling up. You're the only adult in my life who tells the truth. That night, I wrote a letter, not to Garrett or Tiffany, but to myself. I wrote down everything I remembered about my life, my strength, my fears, my dreams. I wrote about the day I became a mother, the day I became a widow, the day I became forgotten, and the day I remembered myself again. I folded it and placed it in the top drawer beside my bed. If anyone ever tried to rewrite my story, I wanted my version to be the one that survived. The next few days were quiet. No more panicked voicemails, no sneaky paperwork. I tended to my azaleas. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about how free it felt to stand on my own porch and know it was still mine. But the quiet was a trick. The real storm hadn't hit yet. Then I heard the familiar dragging sound of a car that knew it wasn't welcome. The car was Garrett's old sedan, the one I helped him buy years ago when he couldn't afford the down payment. It pulled into the driveway slowly, like it didn't quite know if it was welcome. I stood at the edge of the porch and waited. No suit this time, no smile. Garrett stepped out, looking smaller than I remembered, dressed in khakis and a wrinkled polo shirt. He walked up to the steps but didn't climb them. He looked like a man who finally realized his mother wasn't the fool he thought she was. "Ma," he said, "can we talk?" "You've been talking for weeks, Doug," I said, using the childhood nickname only in this final moment. "Just not to me." He looked down at his shoes like a child caught with sticky fingers. This was his vulnerability line. Shame via action. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "I really thought it was for the best." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. My voice was level, almost disappointed. "No, you thought it was easiest for you." He looked up, guilt plain on his face. The confrontation had begun. Tiffany pushed it. You know how she gets. She said you were starting to forget things, that it wasn't safe for you to live alone. I raised an eyebrow, letting the accusation hang in the still air. What did I forget, Garrett? The PIN code I gave you access to? Or the will you never read but assumed would benefit you? He didn't answer. He shifted his weight. The air was thick with the consequence of his choices. Don't blame your wife for the choices you signed your name to, I instructed. I was scared, he admitted. We've got the girls, the house, the bills. It's all so much. And I just thought maybe it was time to start thinking ahead. So you planned a future that didn't include me, I said, behind my back. He took a breath. I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out an envelope. I brought this. It's a letter. Not from me. From Eva. That made me pause. He was using his daughter as a shield, hoping her words would unlock the door he'd already sealed. I walked down 2 steps, took the envelope, and opened it right there in front of him. The words were handwritten, raw, and direct. Dear Grandma, I know things have been awful lately, and I feel like I should have said something sooner. When I found out what they were planning, I didn't know how to speak up without them shutting me down. I was scared, but after I saw you last week, I wasn't scared anymore. You're the only one in this family who has ever made me feel seen. I don't care what they say. I know you're strong, and I know you're still sharp, and I know they were wrong to do what they did. I love you. I'm proud of you, and I want to spend more time with you if you'll have me. Love, Eva. I folded the letter slowly and looked at Garrett. She's a better person than both of you, I said. I know, he whispered. I nodded toward the driveway, ending the scene with a decisive action. You can go now. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He turned and walked back to his car. When he drove away, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. Tired of men who shrink when things get hard. Tired of women who smile while they bury you. I closed the door, knowing I had just buried a version of my son. Back inside, I placed Eva's letter in my drawer beside the one I wrote myself. I sat down, exhaled, and let the quiet settle over me. The emotional arc was bending away from grief and toward purpose. Later that afternoon, Jasmine stopped by to finalize the last piece of paperwork. The sun was pouring through the window like an old friend. The new title for the house, she said, handing it over. Secured under the trust, immune to any future power grabs. She smiled. You did the right thing. Most people would have ignored the signs until it was too late. I almost did, I replied, until a stranger handed me the truth in a paper envelope. Before she left, she asked me if I had any final wishes she should record, any legacy instructions beyond what we already covered. I nodded. I want Eva to have the house when I go, I said, not because I owe it to her, but because she showed up, because she asked questions when the others just made decisions, and because she still knows how to love with her eyes open. Jasmine wrote it down. Done. That night, I pulled out my recipe box, the one I hadn't opened in years. I flipped through cards covered in flour dust and grease stains. Chicken pot pie, buttermilk biscuits, lemon pound cake. I wrote a new one, a promise to myself and to Eva. Title, Eva's First Dinner. Ingredients, 1 granddaughter, 1 kitchen, 1 memory that matters. I placed it on top because from now on, I would cook for people who chose to stay, not those who plotted how to make me disappear. The following Sunday, Eva came over with a tote bag and an apron. She stood on my porch, looking more grown up than I remembered. Not because of clothes, but because of the way she held herself. Shoulders square, eyes steady. She was no longer a child caught between parents. She was choosing sides, and she chose mine. You ready to cook? She asked. I've been ready since 1983, I said, opening the door wide. We made chicken and dumplings from scratch. She peeled the carrots too thick and dropped the measuring spoon into the flour. But I didn't care. She laughed at herself, wiped her hands on her jeans, and asked questions like she actually wanted to learn. I watched her stir the broth while humming to the radio. For a moment, I forgot about the envelope, about the betrayal, about Garrett and Tiffany and their retirement home scheme. All I saw was her. We ate together at the kitchen table. No fancy china this time, just 2 chipped plates and mismatched glasses. We didn't speak much, and we didn't have to. Some silences are a blessing. After we finished, she helped me wash the dishes. We stood shoulder to shoulder, our hands wet and wrinkled in the soapy water. Grandma, she said softly, are you really never going to talk to Dad again? I dried a plate and set it on the rack. I didn't say never, but forgiveness takes more than an apology. It takes change. I don't think he knows how to change. That's not my responsibility, I said. My job was to raise him. What he does with what I gave him, That's on him now. She nodded, but I could tell it still sat heavy in her chest. You love him, I said, and that's okay, but don't let love blind you to the truth. People who love you can still hurt you, and people who hurt you don't always deserve a second chance just because they share your blood. She looked at me with those clear eyes, and I knew she understood the price of freedom. The house deed sat on the counter, waiting for a final name. That night, I showed Ava the garden. The azaleas were blooming, and the moon was low and wide, casting silver across the flower beds. We sat on the porch swing and rocked slowly as the night settled in. I told her stories about her grandfather, how he used to whistle while fixing the roof, how he fell off a ladder once and landed in the rose bush. She laughed until her stomach hurt. It was the kind of night I thought I'd lost forever. Later, after she left, I went to my room and opened the drawer where I kept the 2 letters, hers and mine. I reread them both, one written in fear, the other written in love. Together, they told the full story. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a new letter to myself. Dear Eleanor, you are not what they called you. You are not old and in the way. You are not confused. You are not a burden. You are the root. You are the keeper of stories. You are the woman who remembered herself just in time. Don't forget again. Not ever. I folded it and placed it with the others. The next morning, I made coffee and sat at the dining room table with the real newspaper, not the digital kind. I circled an ad for community storytelling at the local library. Seniors, welcome. Bring your voice, your truth, your experience. Later that week, Jasmine called me. You sure you want to do this? She asked. I am. I could hear her pen clicking on the other end of the line. All right, I've updated the will. Eva inherits the house, the savings, the rights to your memoirs if you ever write one. I'm already working on the title, I said. How's this? The day I was supposed to disappear. She laughed. That'll get some attention. Good. Let the world see what happens when you try to bury a woman who still has fire in her bones. On Saturday, I saw Tiffany's SUV pass my street again. She didn't stop this time. Maybe she'd finally realized I wasn't going anywhere. Or maybe she knew she'd lost the battle she never imagined I'd fight. Either way, she drove off, and I stayed right where I belonged. I smiled and knew my story was finally safe. The house was quiet, not the suffocating, expectant silence of Founder's Day, but the quiet that comes after the storm has passed. I was in my house, in my power, in my name. Not Eleanor the patient, not Eleanor the dependent, just Eleanor Vance, mother, grandmother, survivor. I made coffee and stood on the porch, watching the neighborhood wake up. Mr. Franklin across the street watered his tomato vines. A woman walked her golden retriever past the mailbox. It was ordinary, but peaceful. I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. I thought about the misdelivered envelope, the single moment of clumsy fate that had exposed a quiet, coordinated betrayal. They were counting down the days until I could be tucked away, labeled, and stored somewhere for fading women. Well, I was not fading, and I would not be stored. I thought about the house. For a brief moment, I had let myself believe someone could just come in and take it from me. Not anymore. The house was a sanctuary because I had made it so. I walked to my room and opened the top drawer. I pulled out the 3 letters. The first, written in fear, Ava's, written in love, and the final one, a statement of ownership. I am the root. I am the woman who remembered herself just in time. I returned to the kitchen and stood over the counter, the same counter where my legs went numb when I first read the welcome packet. I saw the small grease stains on the countertop, the chipped plate in the drying rack, the new recipe for chicken and dumplings. My life was messy, it was hard won, and it was entirely mine. The woman who ate alone on Founder's Day had uncovered the truth and made sure no one ever erased her again. I grabbed my keys and purse. I was going to the library to sign up for that community storytelling group. I was going to tell my story, my version, and the world would listen. I walked out the door and locked it behind me. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you are here.